Our first activity is going to be the dialogue. The dialogue is going to introduce the key language that we need to get started in Spanish. This is definitely going to be the hardest chapter that we do because we have to start somewhere. We have to have something to be able to have a conversation, to be able to fill in the blanks. So you're going to get a lot of information in this topic, but I promise if you can stick it out as you go through the workbook, it's going to get so much easier the more that you know. So for right now, we're just going to go over the first page. You can see over here. And we'll go over it for pronunciation purposes. I want you to pay attention to this part down the bottom that explains the pronunciation in Spanish. We're very lucky that Spanish is phonetic. It's spelled exactly how it sounds, not like English. But we do have to get used to some different sounds. We have to get used to the A is always going to sound like ah, like apple, hablar. And then the E gets that very strong A sound, like the number 12, doce. Sounds like the A in pay. The I then gets the E sound. So when you think of something like a B, vivir, you're going to hear that. The O sounds like coat, like an OH to us. Another one of that would be como. And the U sounds like oo. You'll hear people say autobus, not autobus. Like we say it, it's more like the oo in book. Those are just a couple things to keep in mind. Overall, the pronunciation for English speakers, we don't struggle with Spanish pronunciation. Yeah, there's a couple sounds that we have to get used to, but we have these sounds in English for the most part. We don't have to worry about vowel combinations and all the different short and long sounds that we have in English. And that's what makes it so much easier for us. And other things I'll mention as we go along through the book. We'll pick it up as we go. So let's just go over the meaning of these. We have buenos dias. That means good morning. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. Buenas noches. Good evening. ¿Cómo estás? We have here the question and the answer. ¿Cómo estás means how are you? And we're going to go with the polite answer for now. We can play along with different ones later. Estoy bien means I'm fine, I'm well. ¿Cómo te llamas? What's your name? Me llamo Carlos. I call myself Carlos. Mucho gusto. You're literally saying a lot of pleasure. This is how you're going to communicate nice to meet you. And you can say either mucho gusto back, or some people say igualmente, which is like saying same here. ¿De dónde eres? Where are you from? Soy de Guatemala. ¿Eres profesor? Are you a professor? Sí or no soy? Yes, I am. No, I'm not. ¿Y tú? And you? Gracias, which means thank you, and adios, which means goodbye. There's a couple things here I do want to point out that are important. If you notice, all of these are going to be in the to form. And if you're not sure what that is, in Spanish there are two options when you're speaking with someone. You can speak to someone in a familiar way using the to form, or you can speak to someone in the usted form, which is a more formal way. In this workbook, everything is going to be presented in the to form because it's a workbook that starts from the beginning, and when you're a beginner, it's going to be more overwhelming for you to try to remember the formal versus the informal that doesn't exist in English when we have so many more things that we need to tackle, like the verbs. So instead of you worrying about that, we're going to use all the to form in this book. You won't have a problem using the to form anywhere in the world because people are going to hear that you're a beginner speaker. They're going to hear that you're trying, and they're going to appreciate that you're trying, and nobody's going to be upset. Now, if you get to an intermediate advanced level and you're still using the to form with older people, with your doctor, if you're at a job interview in a professional setting, that's a much different story. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. The other thing is, if you notice, when you ask in Spanish about professions, when you talk about professions, there's no A in front of the profession, like in English. So that's a common mistake that as English speakers that we will make, trying to put that and say a teacher, un maestro, when you don't have to say that in Spanish. And the other thing is that E2. I want you to really pay attention to E2 because this is going to be very useful if you're just starting out and it takes you a little bit to process what somebody says to you, and sometimes you're still trying to process it as you're answering or after you're answering. So always remember E2. It's really going to eliminate a lot of that kind of awkward silence. You're not sure who's going to speak next. If you can remember, oh, they asked me something, I answered it. E2. That's how I can quickly ask the same exact question back, keep the conversation going, and I can figure out what I just agreed to. So that is going to be gold for anybody that's starting out in this language. And now with this, we can go ahead and try the activity on the next page. On this page, you're going to have to fill in the blanks with the missing information. Everything that's missing here you can find in the dialogue language on the previous page. There's no tricks, it's all there. You just might have to go look for it. But the big important thing on this page is to realize that there are genders in Spanish. We don't have a lot of this in English. You might see this a little bit with waiter, waitress, where we refer to different occupations according to the gender, but not very many. And in Spanish, it's the opposite, where not very many are going to have one form. The majority of them are going to have a masculine and a feminine form. So these are the rules, and these are going to be very useful because these rules are going to be very consistent throughout the whole language when we get to other grammar points. So if you see here, something that ends in an O, and that could be, for example, down the bottom, mesero, it's going to have the A form for a female. A female would be mesera. But if it ends in a consonant, like we see here with doctor, there still is a female version, but we're not replacing the O with an A, we're adding the A after the consonant. Doctora. And then if it ends in an E, like a representante, a representative, or agente, an agent, that's only going to have one form. I'm going to write those down for you. You can see what they look like, because a lot of times we don't recognize agente because of the H sound, but if you see it, it looks like agent and representante. Representative. Those are just two examples. There's many examples. But we're going to find that these are for nationalities and occupations, but it's going to carry over into other areas of the language, especially when we get to adjectives and describing people. The rules are going to be very consistent, which is good, but it's something we have to get used to. It's something we're just not familiar with. That's going to be it for this page, because you can go ahead and complete this activity on your own, and you have the answer key where you can check your answers to see if it's correct.